I still remember the way I felt that day. My hands were shaking like crazy, and my back was soaked in sweat like I'd just run a mile. But I was grinning like a fool. You want to know why? Because I'd just flown a P-40. I was a fighter pilot, a real one. Not just dreaming anymore. It didn't start that way, though. Back in high school, my buddies and we'd talk about the war. It was creeping closer, and we knew it. But we were just kids. We joked about running away if it came here. I don't know where we thought we'd go. Canada? Mexico? The moon? We didn't really think it through. But then Pearl Harbor happened. Boom! And everything changed. The next day, me and most of the guys I knew, we went down and signed up. I joined as an aviation cadet. I always wanted to fly. That dream was planted in my head by an old family friend, Uncle Jake. Well, not really my uncle, but that's what we called him. His real name was Percival Dexter Jacobs. He flew in World War I, and he'd always say, "If there's ever another war, fly. Don't march, fly." That stuck with me, and I did everything I could to make it real. So, off I went. First stop was Maxwell Field. That's where they decided what you were going to be: pilot, navigator, or bombardier. I wasn't steady enough to drop bombs, and my math wasn't good enough to navigate. But you know what? That worked out fine. I got to be a pilot. The one thing I truly wanted. Training was tough, though. We flew PT-17 Stearmans, those old biplanes. I was awful in those things. Really. I thought they'd wash me out for sure. But my instructor must have seen something in me, because he stuck with me. He didn't give up, and neither did I. Then we moved on to AT-6 Texans at Craig Field in Selma, Alabama. Oh man, that plane fit me like a glove. No problems there. Everything clicked. Flying finally felt natural. Graduation day came, January 14th, 1943. We raised our right hands, swore the oath, and just like that, we were second lieutenants. We put on our wings and grinned like kids on Christmas. That's when they sent me down to the flight line. My instructor, Lieutenant Guerrero, he looked at me and said, "Hallett, you're flying the P-40 today." I thought he was joking. I mean, I had just gotten my wings. I barely knew how to fly a taxi straight. But no, he was serious. That's when I thought, okay, well, this is it. This is the day I die. The P-40 was a beast. You had to push full right rudder just to taxi it straight, because of the torque. The nose was so long you couldn't see a thing in front of you. Like trying to steer the Empire State Building. I was supposed to make my first turn at 500 feet, but I didn't let go of that yoke until 5,000. I was terrified. But once I got up there, I started doing some air work, just getting used to the thing. Then came time to land, and I messed that up too. Overshot the runway. But I had just enough brains not to try to force it down. I circled back around and got it on the ground the second time. That's when I realized I was sweating through every layer of clothing I had. My boots were soaked. But I was alive, and I'd flown a P-40. That moment right there, that's when I knew. I was a fighter pilot, a real one. Not long after that, they started assigning guys to P-38s. I jumped at the chance. Sleek, fast, twin-engine beauties. I wanted one like a kid wants a pony, and sure enough, orders came through. P-38s, that was it. That was my plane. By May of 1944, I was shipped off to England, stationed with the 9th Air Force, and I was ready. Ready to fly, ready to fight. And whether I knew it or not, I was about to become part of history. England was cloudy. That's what I remember most when I first got there. Gray skies, damp everything, but I didn't care. I was 21 years old, thousands of miles from home, sitting in a P-38 Lightning with 2 big engines under my wings and war ahead of me. It was finally real. No more training flights, no more practice landings. This was the big leagues. We started off flying armed reconnaissance missions. Nothing too wild at first. We'd cross the channel, take out supply convoys, maybe hit some trains, and try not to get shot to pieces. You never forget the first time you fire your guns at something real. You're strafing a train, and suddenly the damn thing explodes. Boom! Right in your face. And you're flying through it. Flames licking the wings, heat slamming into the cockpit. It's terrifying. And weirdly thrilling. Every time I came back from one of those missions, I was dripping in sweat, heart pounding. But you couldn't let that show. You had to walk into the debrief like, yeah, I did my job. Like it wasn't the craziest thing you'd ever done. And then came the invasion. D-Day. That morning, we flew up and over the channel, and my God, I'd never seen anything like it. The whole ocean was full. Ships, hundreds, thousands of them, all lined up like they were part of some insane floating army. And on the beaches, you could see them going in. Wave after wave of soldiers crawling out of landing crafts into hell. From the air, it almost didn't look real. But I remember thinking, would I have the guts to do what those guys are doing down there? Probably not. They were storming machine guns with rifles and courage. I was in a cockpit with an escape plan. I respected them more than I can say. Still do. We flew cover, hit the roads, took out anything German that moved. Tanks, trucks, trains, you name it. And when the infantry pushed forward, we moved with them. That's how it worked. The front line moved, so did we. We'd pack up and set up shop closer and closer to Germany every month. Not every mission was clean. I remember the first time I got hit. I was leading a flight. Finally got the chance to be in front. Saw a German convoy hiding in the woods. Thought I was smart. Perfect curve of pursuit, I told myself. Came in low, guns hot. First pass went smooth, but I pulled up like an idiot. That's when they nailed me. Boom! My right engine took a hit. Shrapnel flew through the canopy and slapped me right in the face. My goggles went flying. Blood in my eyes. I thought I'd taken a bullet straight to the forehead. I grabbed the mic and shouted something like, "Judas Priest! I've been hit!" Maybe worse. I don't remember. My wingman jumped on the radio. "You okay, Jack?" And like a tough guy, I go, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine." I wasn't. I thought I was dying. Ground control asked, "Can you make it back?" I said, "Yeah." I wasn't sure if that was true, but I wasn't going to say no. Somehow I limped it back to base. When I landed, the medics were already waiting. They pulled me out. Doc looks me over and says, "Where's the wound?" I point to my forehead. He leans in, squints, and goes, "That? I cut myself worse shaving this morning." Turns out it was just a little scratch. What I'd seen was burst blood vessels in my eyeball. I saw red. Thought it was blood pouring down my face. It wasn't, but of course, I never lived that down. Every time we went up after that, someone would crack over the radio, "Jesus Christ, I've been wounded!" just to mess with me. Fighter pilots. They never let a joke die. Still, I'd gotten lucky. That's the truth. I'd made it home. And that wasn't something everyone could say. Not long after that, I got my first, and only, real dogfight. We were flying escort for a bunch of British Lancasters. Big slow bombers. Beautiful machines. But sitting ducks if no one's watching their backs. That was our job. Keep the Germans off them. I was flying along, scanning the skies like always. When I spotted them, Me-109s, coming in from the front. Now, for a fighter pilot, seeing those German planes meant one thing: a shot at glory. I'd never shot one down before, and I wanted it bad. This was it, I thought. My chance. Finally gonna get in a real fight. Just as I was getting ready to dive in, I checked my rearview mirror. There they were, 2 Me-109s right on my tail. I mean, right there. My heart jumped into my throat. It's one thing to chase the enemy, another to have them chasing you. But I remembered what my instructor told me. If you ever get in trouble, throttle back one engine, slam the other full forward, hit the opposite rudder, and yank the yoke back. So I did it. No time to think. I just reacted. The P-38 twisted and flipped like a wild stallion, and somehow When I came out the other side, nothing. No Germans, just sky. I looked down and saw 4 Me-109s flying just above the cloud cover. I thought, well, hell, I'll shoot down all 4. I dove on them, guns hot. They disappeared into the clouds. I like to think they saw me coming and ran. But the truth is, they were probably diving into cover anyway. Still, I spotted one just as he was slipping into the undercast, and I went after him. We got into a Loughbury, a tight, circular dogfight where neither pilot can get a clean shot. Round and round we went, each trying to get behind the other. No dice. He rolled over and dove into the clouds. I stayed right side up, still on his tail. As we came out the bottom of the cloud layer, I realized something awful. We had no altitude left. He hit the ground, crashed. I didn't fire the final shot, but I was on his tail the whole time. Drove him into the dirt. Got a picture of the wreck, too. That counted as a victory. My only one. Wasn't quite how I imagined it. No flaming explosion, no cheering on the radio. Just silence and a twisted pile of metal on the ground. Still, it was something. But victories were rare, and losses were not. That's the part no one tells you about. The friends you lose. The empty bunks. The ones who don't make it home. 4 of us shared a room. Me, Stan Morrid from Minneapolis, Bill Mason from Brockton, Massachusetts, and John Lund from Ensign, Kansas. We used to give John a hard time about that. There's no such place as Ensign, Kansas, we'd tease him. You're making it up. One day he pulls out this tiny, 1-page newspaper from his hometown. See? He says, proud as anything. Told you. Crossroads, silo, general store. But sure enough, it was a real place. He was a good man. Hell of a pilot. And one day, he didn't come back. We were flying P-47s then. I think we were just heading home, mission finished. A burst of 88mm flak came up out of nowhere and tore his plane apart. Snow on the ground. No shoot. Nothing. We all saw it. Just an explosion and a sick feeling in your gut. That was it. He was gone. I went through his things. Gave the booze to his ground crew. Made sure there was nothing in there that would embarrass him. Not that there would be. He was solid. I kept his A2 flight jacket. I don't know why. Didn't even think about it. Just took it, and I thought that was the end of it. But war's funny like that. Nothing's ever really finished. The war dragged on longer than any of us hoped. After D-Day, we thought maybe we'd be home by Christmas. That's what the higher-ups were saying. Hitler's army was in retreat, we were pushing through France, and morale was high. Everyone wanted to believe it. But then winter hit, and everything changed. The Battle of the Bulge came out of nowhere. It was December 1944, cold as hell, and the Germans threw everything they had left into that counterattack. Snow was falling, the roads were ice, and the skies were so fogged in we couldn't even fly half the time. You'd sit around in your flight gear, waiting for the weather to break, knowing your buddies were out there on the ground getting pounded. When the clouds cleared, we hit back hard. I remember one mission. We were assigned to bomb a marshalling yard, where the Germans were loading up tanks and supplies. We went in one by one, diving fast and low. I watched the first few guys go down ahead of me, and suddenly the whole mountain lit up. Crossfire. Tracers everywhere. Flak exploding like black fireworks. Looked like you were diving into a blender, and you're sitting there thinking, there's no way anyone comes out of that alive. But it's your turn, so you go. You lock your jaw, grip the yoke, and dive. I don't even remember dropping my bombs. I just remember pulling up and realizing I was still alive. Somehow, we all made it back that day. Every single guy. Don't ask me how. There's no logic to it. One day everyone comes home, the next day you lose 3. It's a strange thing. You can go weeks flying missions, feeling invincible. Then suddenly, death taps someone on the shoulder. After the bulge, we started pushing again. Town by town. field by field. And every time the front moved, we packed up and moved our airfields too. Sometimes it felt like we were playing leapfrog with the infantry. One mission I'll never forget. We were escorting bombers again. Same deal. Me-109 showed up, swarming like hornets. It was chaos. Planes crisscrossing, guys shouting on the radio, tracer fire everywhere. And then, silence. After the fight, I was flying alone for a bit, and I spotted something strange down below. It was the battlefield from World War I, Verdun. The snow had just fallen, clean and white, and the shadows from the trenches were still there. Zigzag lines from a war 30 years ago. Shell holes. No man's land, still visible after all that time. I looked down and thought, this is it. This is where it happened. This is where the last war was fought. And here we were, doing it all over again. That moment hit me hard. You're flying over ghosts, over blood-soaked dirt that's seen too much death. And it makes you wonder what the hell we're all doing. But you can't think about that too long. There's always another mission, always another target. Still, those quiet moments, when you're not being shot at, when the skies are calm and your plane is humming, you remember them forever. You think about home, your parents, your buddies, the girl you maybe should have married before you left. And sometimes you think about the guys who didn't make it, the ones who should be flying beside you, cracking jokes, calling you names on the radio. But they're not there. We flew hard that winter. Every mission was dangerous. Every landing felt like a small miracle. You never really got used to it. You just kept going. That's what war does. It turns you into someone who just keeps going, even when you don't know why. After a while, the missions started to blur together. You fly, you fight, you come back, if you're lucky. Some days the adrenaline keeps you sharp. Other days, it's pure habit, like you're running on muscle memory. But there's always that one moment in every mission, the second where everything slows down and it hits you. This could be it. And that feeling? It never really leaves you. It was around early 45 when we got another mission. Escort duty. Seemed simple enough. We were flying cover for some B-26 marauders, I think. Weather was decent. Flak wasn't too heavy that day. But like always, the Luftwaffe had other plans. We were about halfway to the target when I saw them. Me-109s, diving straight at the bombers. I radioed my flight to break and climb. I peeled off and went after one that was angling toward the rear formation. I had a good angle, lined him up in my sights, squeezed the trigger, and nothing. Gun jam. Just silence. I cursed so loud I'm surprised the Germans didn't hear me. Tried clearing it, but I was out of time. The 109 swung in, opened up, and hit one of the bombers dead on. Flames poured out of the left wing. I watched the crew bail out, tiny figures dropping through the sky like slow-falling leaves. I felt useless. That's the worst part. Not the fear, not even the danger. It's the helplessness. You train for years, fly the best machines in the world, and one stupid jam means someone dies. I got back that day, parked the plane, climbed out, and just sat on the wing. Didn't say a word. One of the ground crew brought me a cigarette, even though I didn't really smoke. I took it anyway. Just needed something to do with my hands. Back at the barracks, things were quiet. That's how you knew when someone hadn't come back. If the room's loud, everyone's okay. If it's quiet, someone's missing. That night, I went through the footlocker of a buddy from another squadron who didn't make it back. His name was Charlie. He was from Ohio, loved baseball, couldn't dance to save his life, but he'd try anyway. Always cracking dumb jokes. Always writing letters to some girl back home who never wrote back. It never got easier. Packing up someone's things. But we all had this unspoken rule. If someone didn't come back, you take care of their stuff with respect. You don't let the army just toss it in a bin. You find the photos, the letters, the little things that mattered. You send them home. Some guys kept souvenirs, medals, patches, bits of wreckage. Me? I kept flight jackets. I didn't mean to. Just kind of happened. I still had John Lund's A2 jacket. The one I'd taken when we all thought he'd been shot down and killed. It was sitting folded in the corner of my footlocker, painted with his name, still smelled faintly like oil and leather. I looked at it sometimes, not knowing why I kept it. Maybe to remember. Maybe because part of me didn't want to let go. But the craziest part of that story? John wasn't dead. Yeah, he was alive. Months after we thought he'd been blown out of the sky, I get home to Newton, Massachusetts, walk up to my parents' house, knock on the door, and who opens it? John Lund. I just stared at him. Couldn't speak. My knees nearly gave out. I said, "John, you're supposed to be dead." He grinned and said something like, "Surprise." Turns out he did bail out, but hit the stabilizer on the way down, landed hard in a snow-covered field, and no one saw his chute because it was white. Germans picked him up and handed him off to the Luftwaffe. They thought he had a broken leg and patched him up with whatever they had. He ended up in a POW hospital until the Americans rolled through and liberated it. And then, get this, he got shipped back to Massachusetts. Turns out, while he was recovering in Framingham, he found my dad's name in the phone book and called the house. My dad, being the kind of man he was, invited him to stay with us. So, while I'm still flying missions, thinking John's a ghost, he's living in my sister's room, eating my mother's home-cooked meals and drinking my dad's whiskey. I still can't believe it, honestly. There I was, standing on my own front porch, fresh off the ship from Europe. And the first face I see is John Lund, the guy we'd all written off as dead. I remember just blurting out, "You're supposed to be dead." And he just laughed, cool as ever, like it was no big deal. Meanwhile, I'm standing there like a fool with my duffel bag on the ground, trying to process it all. The war, the survival, the luck of it. And now this. It was surreal. My mom and dad came to the door right after, smiling like it was Christmas morning. Turns out John had been staying at the house for weeks. My sister was away at college, so he had her room. My dad liked him. My mom treated him like one of her own. And apparently, he'd even taken over my seat at the dinner table. I guess it made sense. He was family by then. When you fly combat with someone, share quarters, risk your neck together. There's a bond that doesn't need words. You just know, we spent that whole first night catching up. I asked him everything. How he'd survived. What happened after he hit the ground. How the Germans treated him. He said it wasn't great, but it wasn't the worst. The Luftwaffe treated captured airmen a little better than the regular Wehrmacht. Professional courtesy, maybe. The leg injury turned out to be worse than they thought. Fractured in a few places. They wrapped it in splints made from wood and paper. Real primitive stuff. But once the Americans liberated the area, they got him on a transport straight to the States for surgery. 4 operations in total. And while he was waiting between surgeries, he decided to look me up. Just walked into Boston, found my dad's name in the phone book, and called. My father almost dropped the phone when he heard his voice. "You're John Lund?" he said. "From Ensign, Kansas? My son thought you were dead." And just like that, John got a warm bed, home-cooked meals, and a temporary new family. I couldn't even be mad. I was too stunned, too happy. Seeing him again, it felt like a piece of the war was being returned to me, something the world had taken away, and somehow gave back. Then I remembered the jacket. I said, "You know what, John? I've got something of yours." He looked confused for a second. Then I opened my duffel and pulled out his A2 flight jacket, the one painted with his name, the one I'd taken after we thought he'd gone down for good. His eyes welled up. He didn't even touch it at first, just stared at it, like he couldn't believe it was real. And then he took it in his hands, ran his fingers over the worn leather, the patches, the paint. He said, This is all I ever wanted back. I didn't think I'd see it again." Neither did I. I think we both just sat there for a minute, not saying much, just holding on to something that somehow survived the war, just like us. That night, I laid in my own bed again. First time in years. No engine noise, no briefing in the morning, no flak, no alarms. Just silence. But sleep didn't come easy. Not because I was restless, but because my mind kept drifting. To the guys who never made it home, to the ones whose jackets never got returned, to the empty bunks, the folded flags, the families who got telegrams instead of homecomings. I was lucky. There's no other way to say it. I was just lucky. And that jacket? That wasn't just leather and thread. It was a reminder that sometimes, just sometimes, the war doesn't take everything. The war finally ended, but it didn't end suddenly. Not like in the movies. There wasn't one big explosion and then silence. It was more like a slow exhale, like the whole world was holding its breath. And then, little by little, started breathing again. When the news broke, Germany surrendered. We were still overseas, still in uniform, still flying support just in case someone hadn't gotten the memo. But you could feel it. The tension was gone. The air felt different. Soon after, I got my orders to head home. Got put on a victory ship, 10 days across the Atlantic. Not a luxurious ride, let me tell you. Damp bunks, cold food, guys puking off the side from seasickness. But we didn't care. We were going home. We landed in Boston. I still remember stepping off that ship, taking a breath of that cold, salty New England air and thinking, this is it. I made it. They brought us down to Fort Miles Standish in Taunton, Massachusetts to get processed out. More paperwork than I'd ever seen in my life. Lines and lines of men with duffel bags and tired eyes. We all looked older than we were. War does that to you. Eventually, they let us call home. I picked up the phone, dialed the number, and when I heard my mom's voice on the other end, my throat just closed up. Couldn't even speak for a second. I managed to say, "Ma, it's me. I'll be home in a couple of days." She didn't say anything either, just started crying. I don't think you realize how much war takes from a family until you hear your mother cry just because her son is coming home in one piece. The train ride home was long. I stared out the window, watching the countryside roll by, thinking about all the places I'd flown over, all the towns I'd bombed, the smoke, the wreckage. And now here was this peaceful land, unscarred, green, quiet. I finally made it to Newton, walked up the same front steps I'd walked as a kid, and rang the bell. And you already know who opened the door. John freakin' Lund. After the whole reunion, after the shock wore off, and after I gave him his jacket, life slowly tried to go back to normal. He stayed a little longer with my family, recovered some more, and eventually returned to Kansas. And me? I didn't know what to do at first. I wasn't one of those guys with a plan. I didn't have a college lined up, no job waiting. All I knew was flying. The war made me a pilot, and I couldn't just stop being one, so I kept flying. Not in combat anymore, thank God, but flying nonetheless. Civilian aircraft, training gigs, even some cargo flights. Didn't matter what it was. The sky was where I belonged. Sometimes people would ask me, "Weren't you scared? Up there, fighting, being shot at?" And I'd say, "Hell yes, I was scared." You'd be a fool not to be. But I'd also tell them the truth, that in the middle of the chaos, flying a P-38 at full throttle, dodging flak, the engines roaring, you feel alive in a way nothing else gives you. There's this one moment that never left me. We were strafing a train once, low and fast. I went in, and one of the freight cars exploded. Massive fireball. I didn't pull away in time and flew straight through the damn thing. Flames wrapped around the cockpit. And for a second, I thought, this is it. But I made it through. The heat was so intense, I felt it through the canopy. And when I came out the other side, I just laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I was alive. That adrenaline, that rush, it gets into your blood. It's awful to say, but part of you misses it when it's gone. You come home and nothing feels quite the same. The world moves slower. People complain about gas prices or bad coffee, and you're sitting there remembering the time your friend got shot out of the sky. You smile, nod, and say nothing, because they wouldn't understand. And that's okay. The years went by, and life kept moving forward. I got older, settled into peacetime, made a life for myself, had jobs, friendships, holidays, birthdays, the whole routine. But the war was always there, tucked away in the corners of my mind. Not in a haunting way, exactly. More like a shadow that never quite left. I still flew whenever I could. Couldn't give it up. There was nothing else that gave me the same feeling. That freedom, that thrill, that purpose. The Army Air Corps made me into something I never imagined I could be. A pilot, a fighter pilot. And even after all the danger, after all the fear and the losses, I never once regretted it. Funny thing is, the older you get, the more vivid it all becomes. People think memories fade, but the important ones, the ones where you almost died, or the ones where someone else did, those stay sharp, clear as glass. I never forgot the boys I flew with. Stan, Bill, John, and all the others. Some made it home, some didn't. But I still see their faces sometimes when I close my eyes. Hear their laughter, their voices on the radio, that crackling sound in the headset. "Hallett, you okay?" "Yeah, I'm okay." And I remember John Lund showing up at my house. Still gives me goosebumps. He became a lifelong friend after that. We stayed in touch over the years, visited each other's families, sent Christmas cards. We even joked about turning his death into a movie one day. I never married. Came close once or twice, but it just didn't happen. I guess part of me was always still up there in the clouds, flying missions, living in the past. And I was okay with that. Then one day, much later in life, on my 99th birthday, I got a call. They were offering me a seat in a P-51 Mustang. A real one. My heart damn near burst from my chest. At that age, you don't expect to get back into the cockpit of a warbird. But I did. And when I climbed into that plane, slid on the headset, and felt the engine rumble to life beneath me, I was 21 again. Just a kid, wide-eyed and nervous, but full of fire. We took off. The nose lifted, the ground dropped away, and the sky opened up around me. I couldn't stop smiling. All those years, all that time, and it was like I never left. The air, the sound, the feel of the stick in my hand, it all came rushing back. And I thought to myself, this is where I was always meant to be. People ask me now, near the end, what it was like, what it meant, and I tell them the truth. I dreamed of it. I dreamed of flying, of soaring above the world, of being something more than just a scared kid in high school. And somehow, I got to live that dream. Yes, the war was hell. Yes, I lost friends. I saw things no one should ever see. I felt fear that twisted your insides and turned your hands to ice. But I also felt something else. Pride, purpose, brotherhood, and joy. The kind of joy you can't explain to anyone who hasn't flown a P-38 into the sky and come back in one piece. Was the happiest guy in the world when I took that thing off. They could have killed me that day. Hell, they almost did 100 times. But they didn't. I survived. I gotta live a full life. And when it's finally time for me to go, I'll go with that image in my head. The throttle in my hand, the engines roaring, the ground falling away, and the sky stretching out in front of me. Because I was a fighter pilot. And that, my friend, is all I ever wanted to be.